Welcome to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Ramosi Thurlow scale,
or MOTS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Lost Signals Quarantines Film and Television. I am your host, Chris Morgan, who cannot speak tonight, with Scott Thurlow.
And, just in the woods, it comes at night.
Jonathan Ian Manzur.
Killing people before they affect me.
And Stephen Ramosi.
Gotta do this quick. I got a body to burn.
All righty. Well, we are looking at tonight. We are continuing our plague theme with 2017's It Comes at Night, directed by Trey Edward Schultz. And does anybody have an amusing logline? Ian.
Paranoia will destroy you.
May destroy you.
Nice.
And Mr. Manzur, would you like to continue with the plot, sir?
In a spiritual successor to The Witch, or The Vivitch, which is also a critically acclaimed movie that audiences despise. This is a slow burn about a family on a farmstead that gets some goats from, and that's where the parallels end. There's a disease going around. Another family comes to live with them, and the paranoia sets in as something comes in the night. What it is, who knows? But it's about tension, slow burn, and paranoia. And I actually, what I loved about this film is I really couldn't predict what the ending was going to be, even as it closed out to the final acts. Scott and I just watched it,
conjecturing,
and we were debating over how this would play out. And there's enough. I wouldn't call them red herrings, but there are like hints that the plot could take these paths, and then they kind of choose a good one. And I felt that the ending escalates quickly, like the Vivitch. The ending escalates quickly, but it's a worthy payoff, and I think all the characters make correct choices until kind of the paranoia sets in. When they start making irrational decisions, but still you understand their rationality for making that. And overall, I liked it quite a bit. I'm somewhere between a strong 2 and maybe a 3, depending on what you guys think.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie as well. I did have my issues with some parts of it. I thought were, I know they were trying to be a bit ambiguous about some things, but even parts of those things could have been a little clearer in their conception, I think. But as far as the overall plot went, I thought that it was interesting to see where everything went. It's a really ominous film the entire time, so you get the feeling that something bad is going to happen. But you're right; it was tough to tell like what was going to be the nature of inciting factor, or exactly what was going to happen. So I really like that about it. There were, I think that it's going to come to be probably a pretty strong 2 for me as far as this goes. But yeah, let's hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, I mostly agree that like I thought it kept itself up quite well throughout. Now, not like the strongest ever, but certainly like a solid 2. Maybe Chris, you might have something like to convince me over the line for a 3, but I think a lot of it might go to style and like be dispersed in other questions. But I think a solid 2, it earned that for sure. It certainly kept itself up and was tense. And I think, yeah, you guys said like it's a slow burn, but it's not that long of a film. So I think that works in its favor to a degree. So I think, yeah, I'm looking at like maybe like Chris, like as we kept parsing out a 2.25, right? So not quite a 2.5. So like, it won't like push me over the line, but I think it's stronger than a 2, but not quite a 3. And other questions, other credit that I think that it did well will, again, like I said, be given out to other questions. So looking at it too for plot.
All right, I'm just gonna say right off the bat, this was. I actually tried to avoid recommending this film because I saw it back in the fall, and I couldn't get it out of my head. It was there. So when we were talking about doing plague films, it was the thing in the back of my head that said recommend this. And even though I came up with different ideas, it was the A24 thing that was just like, all right, it's a sign.
That's true. We didn't mention it is an A24 film, so.
Yeah, and I think, Ian, comparing it to The Witch is great in that there is no padding. It is very clear, is very concise. There really isn't really a wasted frame, to be certain. I'm going to stick with, I agree with you guys. I'm going to give it a very strong 2 because I think a lot of, because it works really well as a narrative. There were a couple things. Again, I was kind of hoping we'd get somebody who would push me past a 2.5, but
sorry, buddy.
No. But I agree with Scott. I think a lot of the things that I really appreciate that really work with the narrative come down to style. So,
if I may,
sure.
So I actually see a progression of films here. We make comparisons, or I made comparisons to The Witch earlier on, and that's a very, to those of you who've seen, it's a very fair comparison. But you can also make the dream sequence comparison to The Lighthouse, and I feel that it's the intermediary intermediary film between those two, that it attempts to do kind of the dream sequences to add a level of uncertainty. But not as well as the Lighthouse did. And I think I'm slightly punishing it for better moving having come along in its wake. But I also think, I don't know if the Lighthouse, or I feel that this is, in a sense, there's a generational aspect to this. So, yeah, it's going to get a 2, but perhaps due to it being in between those two.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
but it's being compared to Lighthouse, which I think we all loved quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna stick with the 2 at the end of the day. But if E didn't have a log line, mine was gonna be A Quiet Place to Die of Plague, because I got some hints of vibes of that movie, which I know we reviewed whenever that came out, and the sequel either was supposed to come out or is going to still this summer. But in general,
it's a whole different tension though than Quiet Place.
It falls into a broad umbrella, but they're looking at it from different angles. So I'm saying I just got little hints of that, but I think I'm pretty sure I gave Quiet Place a 2, so I'm giving this similar thing. I think Lighthouse thing is also a relevant little comparison there.
Yeah, I agree, and there were a couple of, and we'll get to this in style, but I want to mention it while I'm thinking about it. Is there's 1 or 2 shots that made me think of Ari Aster too. So
yeah, I can see that for sure.
Definitely when you're looking at the truck up the road, there was 1 shot in particular. I think our compare.
A24 has a type.
Yeah, it does have a type, and I think since this is, as Ian pointed out, was a sophomore film for this, for Trey Edward Schultz.
It was his first major film.
No. It was his second major film. He did have a 1 release prior to that.
I thought it was a short before that.
It was a short, and then he extended it into a Krisha, I believe, is the previous one.
But yeah.
Okay.
And then he released Waves, which is supposed to be tremendous as well.
Yeah, I'm really I really want to see Waves. Okay, so that's twos all around, and Scott, to you with themes.
So Ian touched upon it in his log line. It's a lot of paranoia, right? So what I like about it, again, I can't divorce the fact that I have to reference some of the style, but it comes it's not explained what exactly is happening. You get a vague impression of some kind of illness befalls humans and possibly other animals as well. So the whole framework is one family meets another and sort of warily takes them in, and because of the nature of whatever the catastrophe is happening, that feeds into their relationships and their interactions with each other. And I think it's pretty quite well done. It's like, who do you trust? Should you trust outsiders? Oh, they seem okay. Like, there's a tense moment in the opening act where Paul, I believe, has to interrogate Will and figure out like why he's come to his house, like his motivation and stuff. And they seem to sort of like come to not a friendship, but at least a understanding. And then that, about the middle of the film, you think like, oh, these two families are coming together, but there's still tension throughout that. And then, takes a big jump at the end. But I still think it's all really nicely like baked on the layer, if you will, of the narrative. So I think that's one of the major themes. There might be others like that poke their heads up here and there, but I think that like, should we, or how is it that humans come together in a time of catastrophe in which they can trust strangers and or not, to whatever degree it might be, in the service of survival, I guess I want to say. So I think that for that, I'm probably looking at a 1, but I'll open it up now. What do you guys think of it?
Well,
Yeah,
I think
agree.
it's also saying that. Go on.
Go, Steve.
Sorry, guys. I was just going to say I agree with pretty much everything that you're saying. I think that the paranoia and the it's the problem that we talk about from time to time. It's like, how can you really know somebody outside of your family, outside of your immediate clan? Like, what makes trust happen in like humans, basically? And this kind of like breaks down like all the societal things that we have in place that kind of bring people together, like foster trust, and says, look, you can't trust them even if they're telling you every like the truth, because you can't trust that they're not sick. You can't trust that they know what's going on with themselves. And that's kind of what breaks down at the end, I think, is like, they realize that a kid might be sick and everybody's going to act in their own family's interest. And that's exactly what happens, So I don't know. That's kind of my off the cuff version of that.
But I also think it's a look at the fallacy of that we have this ingrained sense that, we can trust family or we can trust our own instincts, but that can lead us to make irrational decisions. In the face of when the protagonist family is incorrect in the end. Their assessment is wrong. And it leads to tragedy because they allowed, they gave up their rationality for their baser instincts.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And
is it, hold on. Sorry. Is it like, what do you mean they were wrong? That the kid was sick? I don't think that was.
Their own son was sick. He went out. I think he went out and touched the dog. No, the young kid was fine.
Travis
was the one who was sick because he opened the door and touched the dog.
Travis, yeah, but you heard the young kid coughing. I think it was supposed to be ambiguous what was going on.
Well, weren't they both like? But
the young kid, I was trying to avoid spoilers here, but I guess they got shot in the head before we know, because they again allowed their fear to overtake them. So we'll never know, because everyone died in a Tarantino-like standoff at the very end. And I think it's also proof that social distancing, masks, and washing your hands are a load of shit when it comes to the actual.
That is not true, listeners.
No, because you're going to be out there shooting people when
in this fictional plague, but sure.
When the chips are down, no amount of social distancing will save you from the bullets.
No,
I'm still giving
you just got to social distance yourself out of range of the bullets. That's it.
From bullets. Fuck. Yes. Good job. Yes, thank you.
It's like, what's the social distance? I don't know. What's your caliber?
Nice. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, I agree with you. As we talk about it, I'm starting to process the film a little better. You're right. It is one of those things where the little kid, probably wasn't sick, might have been sick. It's and how did the door get
Purposely
unlocked?
unclear.
Yeah, but how did the door get unlocked?
Yeah.
The kid couldn't.
They made a strong point that he couldn't reach the door to unlock it.
Yep.
So it was definitely Travis and his night terrors that.
Yeah, his
opened the door
night terror
and found his door.
sleepwalk.
Plus his affection for the dog, like both of those.
Yeah.
So what it really means is that you have to just surround yourself by the Ron Swansons of the world, like a Paul in this, where everyone makes the appropriate rational decisions.
Yeah, you got sleepwalk proof the house.
Yeah.
But it's I agree with everything you guys say. Like I said, as somebody who watched this for the second time, there's something about this film that I can't let go of. So I mean, when I'm throwing you guys this stuff, I'm really.
So it affected you?
Yeah, it affected me. This thing gave me nightmares last night. Not like nightmares it's like the stress kind of paranoia kind of.
I feel you.
No,
This is the second episode of I made that joke.
Yeah.
Great.
what was this?
Nothing. The infected joke. This ex-work infected you.
Gotta get it in there.
Can I step in it again? No, but I agree with you. I actually just assumed both the sons had it, but deconstructing it, it's just like yeah, it's there.
I mean, I think the strength of it is that you could make the case that maybe not, but either way, it fulfills itself thematically, I guess.
Right.
But the idea is, all right, see, the thing is the escalation and how everything all of a sudden snowballs, because Will said he would never lie to him, and then it turned out it was his brother-in-law, not his brother, which, to be honest with you, when you're under duress, is an easy mistake to make. And a lot of times I just you just for the economy of words will skip things like my brother-in-law, or
Sure.
Hey, Steve built this guitar for me. It depends on my brother-in-law Steve with my personal thing. So I mean, just omitting that is something we would do any day.
Yeah, it's a humanistic element. Yeah, for sure.
But once you get in this situation, every little detail matters. And as you said at the end, the one thing I do like about it is that things escalate real quickly, and nobody has the wherewithal to slow anything down.
What I really like about this work and why I really appreciate it is that I think as the viewer, you're watching this trying to figure out what's going to go wrong. But that's exactly what Paul's doing as well. He's waiting for that lie to appear, that or someone to get sick. He's preparing for that, just as we as the audience are. So
doing the same thing. Yeah.
We're actually when that reveal came about the brother, I turned to Scott and did, here's the lie. It wasn't a lie, but I was expecting it to be a lie because I figured that was the plot that was going to go out, just as Paul himself was looking for
any crack there. Yeah.
And I think it's almost betterly clever in the way they build that tension.
Yeah, I agree. I think they handle the themes pretty well, and for everything we just said, I'm going to give it one of the strongest ones for the questions. Yeah.
I really like that as well. And Ian, you're absolutely right to add on your addition to what I said earlier.
Yep.
I think it is a lot about, being wrong about your paranoia. So that's a good call. I'm going to give it a 1 as well.
Excellent. And Steve-O, would you like to continue with the antagonist, please, sir?
Sure. I guess plagues. This plague specifically. What's that? Is that the antagonist?
No. Well, I was going to say, is it one and the same? Isn't paranoia maybe the antagonist?
Yeah, I would say that paranoia is probably a stronger antagonist than the actual sickness itself in this film. Framed in I'm sure in these people's lives, the real antagonist is the sickness. But in this film, what we see, the slice that we see of their lives, certainly wants to focus on the paranoia that is involved with their experience with this. And it's something that a lot of people are experiencing right now as well, with COVID-19 going on, but that is a pretty effective antagonist. I think it makes people, that makes people act in ways that they wouldn't normally act in ways towards other people that they wouldn't normally act. I think it's just an interesting commentary, since this came out obviously well before all this stuff. I think it's just a good commentary about discourse in general, and becoming so paranoid that the other person's in any conversation is trying to screw you, that you
can't see anything else.
Right. You act in ways that are against the ways that you sometimes otherwise might act. So I think that's interesting. I guess that could have gone into themes too, or we could kind of talk about that. But as far as the antagonist goes, I think it's pretty strong.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree. Don't much more to add, but I think like they work hand in hand. So, like you mentioned, Steve-O, like basically the sickness plague is more of a backdrop. Like it's not quite the antagonist. It's just there as the framework to explore the shit we just said, and as related to themes, and also the antagonist. That who you are, like what happens when you're forced into a situation, and how do you act versus what you might have normally acted in a quote unquote more civilized circumstance.
But I forget whether we did this on another episode or just our chatting in general. But this is like a bubonic plague type disease that they have. A very quick onset. It's even got like
visually
gross and tar vomit, I suppose. But without that level of visceral in your face disease, I think that fuels the actual paranoia versus
it goes hand in hand.
So I do think they feed off of each other. But I do think the paranoia obviously is the main antagonist, but it wouldn't be that way without the.
I think that's fair. Yeah. Good assessment. What do you think, Chris?
No, I agree with you guys. Ian, what you just said reminded me of something they said in the film where, Paul's father-in-law, I'm blocking his name, Doug?
I'm not even sure if he had a name, but...
Yeah, his father-in-law.
I don't remember.
Bud. And they said he showed symptoms within a half a day, and he was going to stay with this family 3 days, which all of a sudden, talking to you, is like, well, what's the incubation period? I mean, the incubation period could be 3 days. It could be 3 weeks. You never know. So, it is really interesting. Like, at what point did Travis get, have they all been carriers essentially?
Yeah.
I mean, so right. I think
it was implied that Bud. I was going to say, I think it was implied that Bud got infected. The father-in-law got infected like a day earlier, like within the day.
At max, right?
Like they knew when he got infected, and
right. But like I said, there's still some. But I'm just saying it begs some questions within me, which in turn strengthens the paranoia which strengthens basically the antagonist as this field of unknowns that would create a paranoia and.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm giving it a pretty strong one on that front.
Okay.
Same.
And that leaves me with Paul. And
does it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm going to consider him, unless somebody wants to make the only other person I would make the only other person that I could think we could make would be a protagonist, and maybe their joint protagonist is Travis.
I'm fully on Team Travis.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay, because as soon as I'm like, well, maybe we're on Team Travis. Yeah, because in a lot of ways it is told through his eyes. Because he was there. It was through him we see the sleepwalking. It's through him we get the foreshadowing and the looking back. And it's Travis. Shit, it's Travis. Travis is the protagonist.
That's really interesting. Because Paul is the protagonist of Travis's story, but we're watching Travis watching his family, basically, and this other family. Like, right? Paul is positioned as a protagonist would be positioned in this movie, except for we have like this other level that we're behind, kind of watching what happens to Travis and throughout the whole thing. It is really interesting to think about. I'm not sure if I would have put Travis as the protagonist before I just thought about that, but now I'm like pretty firmly in that camp that he is the sole protagonist.
I'm good. I'm actually saying this based on the Witch, because the father in that is basically Paul in this, both a deconstruction of the alpha male incapable of saving his family, and actually, I mean, they have different faults in the way they handle the situation, but
generally
in The Witch, it's the daughter's story, and in this, it's the son's story, and I think that parallel, although again, I said it's different critiques of the male patriarch, I think that it's handling that same similar fashion.
Yeah, I mean, not clearly, but because we get, for example, we get a lot of the dream sequences via Travis, right? Like that seems to paint him as more of a protagonist role. It even opens on him, right? Sure, it opens on him and Paul, but it's certainly like he's focused on more, even just like via camera angles, like it's his face, it's his reactions and so forth. And I think as the story goes on, it's clearly
it's his eyes you see his parents through as he's dying,
through his experience.
And the only time that you ever see Will's family by themselves is through Travis's eyes and ears, when he's spying on them. So you never see them unless Travis is looking at or listening to them.
Travis is the keeper of the secrets in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so I think this is more evidence to like count him as like by large means in fact like quote unquote main protagonist, and then Paul is, as one of you said, protagonist of in his own mind of his story because it's filtered through that. So yeah,
he's what we expect the protagonist to be.
Yeah, you're right. It's a good little subversion there. But regardless, I'm giving Travis a 1. And sorry, Steve, who's the actor? If you got it in front of you, anybody?
I do not have that. I didn't.
Oh my God!
I didn't prepare as I usually do. I'm sorry.
I thought you did.
Kelvin Harrison Jr.
Yes, let's give Kelvin Harrison Jr. a bunch of credit there because I think it is his story, and he's a really good job of portraying that character. So,
yeah, and
give it a 1.
FYI, he's in Waves too, so another reason to check that out.
Yes, very nice,
definitely.
Yeah, and it's really good. I was convinced Paul was, and then as soon as I looked at your guys, I'm like, oh shit, no, it's not.
Yeah, it's almost like the thing from 12 Monkeys that we talked out the other week. But yeah, I think it's, as we discussed it, it's fairly clear, and I think it's due a fair amount of credit there.
Alrighty. No, I'm starting to understand why I needed to review this.
Fair enough.
No, I mean the film is really affecting me. It affected me the first time I saw it. Obviously, it affected me again last night when I saw it. There's something about it that's an itch I can't scratch, and doing this is actually really good.
I get that checked out.
But either way,
I had all that done before I got married. So
good luck getting a doctor's.
Okay.
Just kidding. Before that,
smart.
Okay, so enough about my play. Enough about the fact that I don't have any diseases.
Methinks the doth protest too much. So
supporting
again, Paul is I love he's a Ron Swanson type character, a real manly man, not quite a survivalist, but has that kind of traits.
Yeah.
And he is incapable at his, oddly enough, well, if I say prejudices, I don't mean against a racial way. I mean his prejudices towards kind of the independent, family-oriented male mindset leads him to be a monster, even though he is acting with the best intents. And I also think that the Will and his family, Kim, which is Will's wife, has great chemistry with Travis.
Yeah,
in the scenes they have together. Whether they were especially that one scene when he sees her downstairs in the kitchen,
it's like weird, like low grade sexual tension or something.
And it builds one of the red herrings in this film.
Yes, True.
But I think that all the characters played off of each other very well. The mother, Travis's mother, I felt had kind of a backseat role.
Yeah.
And it was more of where Paul, Will, and to a lesser extent Kim were the main driving forces of most of the action that Travis is witnessing. And but overall I think that without good actors in that, the tension wouldn't be believable, and the tension was high throughout this.
Yeah, I most agree. Yeah, not much more. Of course, because it's a small, claustrophobic cast, if you will, 2 families of 3 people each, essentially. So, I think that the rapport between each was quite well done, and the fact that they each had little moments, like you said, there's Travis and Kim, they each had the moments where they interacted with each other, either one-on-one, if you will, or 2-on-3, and then all of them together, when Paul officially welcomes them to his house, it's okay, here's the rules, etc. Here's how we're going to do it, all that. Yeah, I think the dynamic and the chemistry worked really well. And perhaps in lesser hands or without the casting that they had, it might have fell flat, but I think it worked quite a bit, and they all collectively earn a 1 for me pretty easily. So,
yeah, I think I agree with that. All the supporting characters have been named. This is a very small cast in this film. But yeah, absolutely. I thought they all stood out. Yeah, Ian, you're absolutely right. It's kind of a shame Sarah's character didn't get
put out a little bit more. Yeah.
I couldn't even remember her name.
Yeah, it was just very it was. She was obviously not a character that this movie wanted to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but
I guess we haven't mentioned. Well, I'll leave the last one to you, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
Well, about Sarah, in a weird way, she might have been, because basically the movie starts off with her father dying, and Paul has to get Travis to help him do, basically go out and shoot and burn him. So in a lot of ways, it's kind of like Sarah is kind of like the surrogate for the audience, where she's there to absorb the pathos, essentially.
I see. I feel you. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that her character doesn't have substance or anything, but she is kind of more passive to the thing because, she, in a way, she's in shock. She just lost her dad, And
she also gives permission to Paul and, by extension, the audience, for them to go after the family.
Right.
Will's family.
Yeah, true.
Because when she breaks
to Paul, no, we need, I agree with you, we need it. That is to that pathos argument.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and then, exactly what you said, Ian.
Yeah, I think it's a subtle point, but I think it's again well handled by the script and by the how the character unfolds in these stories. So yeah, good call, boys. Very nice. Still 1 though overall.
Yeah, and poor Stanley. Is that the character you wanted me to mention?
Yeah, of course. I think so. I knew you had to talk about that.
Yeah, anytime there's a dog in one of these kind of films, I'm like, start detaching yourself now.
But he was a very good boy.
Yeah. He was
a very good boy.
He was part of their family. He was a protective, and then got caught.
He would have made a great Terminator dog.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he wasn't a German Shepherd, which, as I made the comical point, that only German Shepherds apparently can sense Terminators. But anyways, no, I mean, it was, again, it legit rounded out their family dynamic that it was, I believe it was implied it was the grandfather's dog, and now Travis was taking care of it, and of course that feeds into how he, his character at all, and how he's dealing with the grief of it. So.
Excellent. Okay, so that's 1 all around, and it is to Scott with dialogue.
So this one I'm a little iffy about. It was fine. It was perfectly serviceable, which I know I fall back on a lot. I don't know if I guess it brought itself along well enough, even if it wasn't standout. I think everything else, other questions we've already addressed, were better handled versus the actual spoken lines. but I believed, like we just said, even secondary, their interactions with each other, like what they were saying to each other, what was spoken, what was exchanged between, at any given time between any given characters and whatever dynamic that might have been. So I don't begrudge it. I just think, like, if I'm going to criticize something about this movie, I think it was a weaker part of it.
But witty dialogue would have been not service or like. So if you to go back to the comparisons, The Witch had that Old English aspect. The Lighthouse had that kind of sailor
cast
speak.
you down, you sure? But
This was just two American families,
sure,
chatting with each other in the post-apocalyptic.
But maybe like what they said, like, I guess was it came across in themes, but again, I'm wrestling. I'm not dead set on one score or another. I'm just saying that's my initial impression. So I'm saying if there's a weaker point to this film, I think the dialogue might be that, but that's how I'm looking at it. So go ahead, my friends.
This is one of those things where I think the dialogue was natural. I don't think there was anything that was forced. I don't think there was anything where I felt that there was the writer's hand, because sometimes in stuff like that, you're always fearful of that pontificating moment where the writer decides to throw in a line because they think that's clever or whatever. I mean, I think it was very genuine. I think a lot of what wasn't said actually spoke volumes. I mean, when Paul just is like, well, I'm going to bed, and he picks up the glasses and picks up the bottle of whiskey and walks off. It's kind of like he'd opened, that whole scene said a lot to what happened with Paul and with Will. I'm going to give it a 1 because, like I said, I didn't feel the writer's hand in that. And it may not be like, whatever, but I did not feel the writer's hand. It felt natural, and the nonverbal went a long way with me as well.
And they gave a shout out to Red Velvet Cake cupcakes, and I love Red Velvet cupcakes.
So that got him on
pretty
board.
good.
What do you think, Steve?
I think that it was fairly natural. I'm kind of in your camp, Scott. Like, it's not super. I don't know what the word is. I'm not talking. I don't mean like it had to be like punchy or like.
Yeah. You feel me, right?
But it's not like very super memorable. It's nowhere near the most memorable part of this movie. But that being said, it was natural, and there are a couple scenes that were memorable, especially those scenes where, like you guys mentioned, the scene where they're drinking whiskey together, the scenes where he's explaining the rules of the house, I think were some of the better ones.
Yeah, that was a good scene. Yeah,
that's like where their dialogue is most understated, right? He's just like basically listing stuff, and then everybody's like, "Yep, that sounds reasonable" or whatever. But like, those were kind of the most connected moments I felt with some of the between the characters. That said, I'm probably gonna give this a 1. It's probably one of the weaker ones that I'm gonna give this film, but I think it's still deserving.
Yeah, that's something.
I'm sorry, Scott.
You're good.
All right, here's something I noticed, because a lot of times they'll throw in a joke or something to add some levity to it. But when he's talking about the bathroom, he's like, well, it's out there, but at night we put it in buckets and we throw it, and then he chuckles and goes, we'll go over that later. I mean, that was a very natural, right in the money. That is an unintentional thing that turned out to be funny, that actually broke the tension in that scene for the characters, not for us, for the characters.
No,
and by extension, us. But
I guess I would say, like, I was looking at a 0.75. Like, what I mean? Like, again, I know it's become like a funny thing where we like start breaking it down to decimals or whatever. But like,
I don't find it funny at all.
I do. I find it amusing because we're getting as we draw down. But no, I think you're right. Like, overall, it was like nothing cringeworthy. Never that I think like, oh, that line didn't make sense or was out of place, or why would a character say that to another character, etc. So I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt and give it a 1.
Ian, Steven? All 1?
Yeah, I love this film.
1.
Yep, 1 as well.
All right, which brings us to Steve-O with style.
Yeah, this is the style of this is one of the stronger parts.
I think
of
it is the strongest point. Yeah,
it's very just looks really good, and the sound work and sound design is
sound design,
incredible.
fucking A, dude. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, it's really good, and yeah, I don't know. It's a beautiful movie to look at. Very bleak, and it makes you feel it the entire time. So
here's what I noticed real quick. One of the most special things to me is that the claustrophobic, like the blocking, Steve-O, and the lighting, like all that stuff, added to like the feel, like being trapped, or like not trapped, but like being confined to this house, and that's your entire like world, like that's your experience, that's your life. So I think that added a lot to it. It certainly elevated it, and I noticed that every shot was really, really cool. Even when when the space opens up a bit and it allows it to breathe, like when they go into the woods and like things like that, shots like that, scenes like that, I think it all works. And I think to me, style is one of the most impressive, like top 3 most impressive parts of this film. So I'm giving it a very strong one.
This work was influenced by The Triumph of Death, the 1562 oil painting by
which was in
Peter
right?
Bruegel the Elder.
Oh, what's wrong?
I thought it was Bosch too, Chris. I'm sorry. I said that too. I was like, it's not a Bosch painting.
No, but
you guys just thought it was a seascape.
Yeah.
But also Paul Thomas Anderson, which I can see.
Oh yeah.
Especially in the early scenes, and The Shining, which I can see in the dream sequences.
Yeah.
And the car traveling down the road.
Yeah, but overall, I think that even though I did mention those as influences, I think it has its own voice as well.
I agree. It's not just aping them like all like just for the sake of it. Yeah.
And Ian, could you repeat the painting and the artist, because
oh Jesus, I thought I was going to get through without having to pronounce this guy's name.
Sorry.
It is the Triumph of Death, which is a Peter Bruegel the Elder.
Okay.
1562.
Yeah.
I cut you off when you're in the middle of talking about it, so I wanted to.
No, like I've been saying, like it's funny thing is I definitely recognize that painting, and I thought it was a Bosch painting too. And on the spot, he looked up. He's like, "It's not that. It's not what you think it is, but it is a famous painting from the 1500s." Which, yeah, like of course, just as a cap off, ties into the themes and like what the movie is going to explore for sure.
Bruegel,
yeah.
Nice.
You did mention the color in it being stark, and maybe, but the thing I like about it is they didn't wash out the colors, which would have been such an easy impulse for a movie.
It was very crisp. You're right, Chris. Good call. Yeah, good call. Yeah.
As you can see behind me, if you're watching this on YouTube.
Yeah. All right, one's for style. It sounds like Bruegel.
Okay, and that is to me with recommend, and I'm going to pass it to you guys first because I obviously recommended we watch it, and do I recommend it beyond this point? I'll come back after you guys have your say.
Brief, yes, I do. It's a good call, Chris. I feel like I should have known that when this film came out, like it was on the cusp of when we were discovering A24 stuff, but now having seen it, yeah, I think it's a good film in general. Of course, maybe it's more relevant to what's happening right now in real life. But either way, I think it's well constructed, well written, well acted, and everything else. What we just said, I would more broadly recommend it than I wouldn't. So 1 for me.
I love this era of horror between Hereditary, Midsummer, Lighthouse, Witch, and this. They all have. I would group them all in. Some are better than others. I think Hereditary and Midsummer are better than this, and Lighthouse is better than this. However, I think this is a solid entry, and if you like those films, you will like this film very much so. And I adore these type of horror. There's limited jump scares, a lot of psychological horror, slow burn, building tension. It's my cup of tea. It's got like, I think it has 80% Rotten Tomatoes and a 40% audience review. So it's not for everyone, but It is
It
for
is
my
us.
sensibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think that I wouldn't recommend this to everyone by any means, but for the most part, I really enjoyed it a lot for a lot of the same reasons as you, Ian. There were a couple of times where I was like a little bit, but actually having talked about it with you guys,
Far between.
I think I like the movie more now than even when I finished it, which I liked it quite a bit at that point too. And yeah, I think that it's a movie that, especially if you like those movies that you mentioned earlier, Ian, and honestly, I think this is a great movie. Probably my lowest of those 5 that you talked about earlier.
They're all such high bars.
They're all amazing, yeah,
exactly.
in terms of horror. So, yeah, I would give it a 1. I'm going to give it a 1 for this question, even though, as I said, I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, but there are certainly a lot of people that I would tell to watch it and I think would enjoy it quite a bit. So
I'm really glad I recommended this. To be honest with you, again, I really wasn't sure because it left me the first time it left me. I was kind of like that weird shock. The film does not feel. It doesn't even feel it's hour and a half in a lot of ways. I can't believe.
You're right, Chris. I'm sorry. Like real quickly, like even like, oh, it's a slow burn, but because of the running length and because of how like tight it is, like spaced out, it does not. It's very. I literally was sitting up like this watching it at certain points, and so
it's definitely not. It does get in. I'm proof positive. It got under my skin, and I'm glad we reviewed it because now I was able to actually like pull back from it. It wasn't like crunched up in my head. I'm actually able to like look at it as a piece of art in terms, and aside from a piece of horror that got all my buttons, like
yeah.
Sure.
So I'm with Steve-O. While I would not probably broadly recommend this, I know enough people, 3 of you for certain, that do enjoy The Witch, The Lighthouse, the Astra films, and stuff in these veins. A very smart, less is more type of a horror movie. So yeah, I'm going to recommend it, and thank you, gentlemen, because I really didn't know what I was going to do when we got to this question.
No, good call. Yeah, overall, I think it's definitely worth a watch for sure. And yeah, if you're the new wave of horror, I guess we'll call it, it certainly should be counted amongst that, and it's solid.
The A24 wave.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Which
I could see this being known as an underappreciated video of that generation, like on whatever the What Culture version is.
it's like Event Horizon or some shit like that.
Yeah. It most certainly is. And because to Ian's point, I've looked at reviews of this and people are like, oh my God, it's so boring. What comes at night? I don't get it. And no, but the thing is, but I mean, as somebody who I'm going to, until my dying day, who is somebody who is unfair, who was not fair to Hereditary when it came out. You're
never going to live that down.
I am never. No,
he won't let himself live it down.
Actually, I'm punishing myself for that.
I know.
That's why if I have a bad reaction to a movie or a overly good reaction, I'll stay off the podcast. But no, it's a smart film. It is a really smart film. And extremely well done, and shut up in upstate New York for
yeah, that's right, F&A. So where does it leave us, buddy?
We all gave it 9s for the same reason. You and Steve-O were back and forth in the dialogue. I think Ian, you and I kind of helped push that along.
Yep.
Hey. And actually, in a weird thing, I think Ian came out like, I'm not sure if I'm going to give this a 2 or 3. And usually we all look to Ian to move us to either 2 or on that part. So this is a nice little
change up there.
Change up.
As I said, this is my actually favorite genre of film. This kind of psychological horror. I adore
and this
these,
one. Hit a lot of buttons for you. Yep, here.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's a 9 overall. Right.
It's a 9 overall, man.
The Descendants of Mention.
Yes. And I think I think it earned that, and it's damn worth it. So if you're into it, definitely give it a look, and it'll be a good experience, if not a pleasant one, but something that you can get something out of. So
agreed.
Awesome.
Well, gentlemen, if there's nothing else, I will say that I have been here with Stephen Armosi.
Have a good one. Watch out for little tiny germs.
Jonathan Ian Manser.
If you enjoy these films, please check out Arthur Machen. He's an author. How Lovecraft is represented to certain people, Arthur Machen is the godfather of these types of films. The kind of psychological, slightly otherworldly. Check it out. Great God Pan, The White People.
And Scott, I was just about to say that I was about to put the titles in before you did. And Scott Thurlow.
And I have to go bury my own grandfather who is sick of some undescript plague right now. See you next time.
Keep safe and take care.
Cheers.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.
Or Mott's?